This commission was something very important in the post-democracy South Africa, or in the new dispensation, I should say, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I know you remember that. TRC was reported on in print, on the radio, and television with no restrictions. Now, this in a country where previously exposing the truth to the public was shunned upon, it was frowned upon. It was very difficult and it was a dangerous undertaking. But how far have we come? How far have we transformed over the past 20 years of democracy? Joining us now to discuss the media-related issues in the democratic South Africa is William Bird from Media Monitoring Africa, or MMA. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's brilliant to be here on Freedom Day.
Now, let me begin by that question that I asked while I was reading all to Q there. How far have we come really in the new South Africa as far as media is concerned?
Sure. We've come massively far in so many respects, you know. So if you say, are we a much better place than where we were in 1994, I mean, I don't think that there can be any real debate about that unless you've sort of been living in a tree or something and smoking your socks. I'm so pleased you mentioned the TRC, because it was one of the first really big things in terms of South Africa's new democratic sort of trying to get to grips with our brutal past. And the SABC at the time did such an incredible job. I mean, people now are getting all warm and fuzzy about how Oscar Pistorius has been covered. But at the time, there were people broadcasting all of those testimonies. There were roundups, there were reviews, there was critical current affairs programming, and the majority of that stuff was done by the public broadcaster. It was seriously amazing stuff. I mean, some of the audio from there, which I hope is still in the SABC's archives, although tragically I think those have been sold off to MultiChoice. But there's some incredible stuff there. So if you look at it, as you say, moving from an area where we weren't allowed to say things or report on the overwhelming majority of things, to an era where you can say and do what you need to. It's fundamental shifts. If you look at the public broadcaster, we've seen in the way that African languages are treated, particularly as an example. You know, they're always seen as this thing of there to be the surrogate, these downgraded, bad languages that we kind of have to live with because lots of black people speak them somehow. And yet, so you saw this shift. So as a quick example, you never used to get economic indicators on African language news bulletins because, of course, you know, blacks, they don't need to know these things. So there was this fundamental racism that was built into the way our news was constructed, from how it was structured to the stories that were written. You know, things were never produced in a way that made sense in African languages. They were always done English first and then translated backwards. To some degree, we still have that as a bit of a hangover in some of our bulletins, but these things are so much better now that you've got. So if you look at those things, there's some fundamentally wonderful things.
Wow, my goodness. And now that you mention it, I do actually pick up and see what you're talking about. So many strides have been made, but a lot more still needs to be done, I believe, especially when it comes to some of the legislation that is being proposed, what has been termed a secrecy bill. I know that's not the correct term for that. But when it comes to that, do you think it threatens how far we've come as a media in South Africa?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in as much as we can celebrate, and we must celebrate and communicate the incredible achievements, we also need to make sure that we guard these institutions. In as much as people fought with their lives, we need to guard them with our lives too. The kind of attacks that we're seeing on the SABC from within, from some of the senior positions, some of the deeply unfortunate, profoundly befuddled decisions that we've seen in regard to banning certain political party adverts, for example. You know, these kinds of things undermine the credibility of a critical public institution. We need to see far more transformation across our media spectrum. There was a print and digital media transformation task team that completed its work last year, but there's significant shifts that need to still happen. We don't have anywhere near enough diversity if you're a poor South African. If you are wealthy, then you can access anything you like. Our cost to communicate is still extraordinarily high. I mean, our mobile operators make more money than most small nations, and then they whine and bitch about having to cut their intercommunication costs. Some of these things are profoundly unacceptable. So there's huge strides that we have to go to. ICASA's recent decision, it's a Chapter 9 critical institution, yet their decision against about the the SAPS and their complaints.
And the EFF, yes.
Mind-bogglingly.
But let's speak about the responsibility as well of the public broadcaster. ICASA has ruled that EFF was inciting violence in that advert. So what responsibility do we have? And as briefly as possible, because I'm looking at the corner of my eye and I can see we're running out of time. So perhaps in 30 seconds or so, the responsibility that we carry, not only as a public broadcaster, but as the media, to make sure that as much as we give people airtime, we're responsible about the messages that go out.
Well, there's the thing. Instead of letting our agendas being set and determined by politicians, they need to be set and determined by the audiences. And for the public broadcaster, that means by the citizens. It means we need to interrogate every politician. We need to interrogate what they stand for, what they're going to do, what their policies mean, and not just about hearing them say nice things on Freedom Day, but actually saying, yes, but how will that actually work in reality?
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time, of course. Of course, you know that. That's a common problem in the media. You can never win this debate. I wish we had the whole day. But we're going to take a quick ad break. Before we go, we're going to say goodbye to you. But